Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Brendan's back. There's a lot to cover with this, right? Brendan Rodgers is the new Celtic manager, and we obviously did post here as well. Just I know everybody can't see him, so I thought I would mention that. We done a wee podcast talking about who would come in and who we thought would be, and we did speak about Rodgers, but I think we both felt as if that was unlikely. I felt as if I don't know, it's just one of those things that I would say this is obviously a pretty big appointment, but I just think in my head I thought it's not somebody that we're actually going to go for, and it's not actually going to happen. So it's quite surreal, like unbelievable to think that he's actually had the balls to come back and sign for Celtic again. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but how do you feel about it, Paul?
Well, I mean, like, I think it's weird that the new season of Black Mirror has come out on Netflix and Brendan Rodgers is back at Celtic. I feel like I'm in an episode of Black Mirror. It feels surreal. It doesn't feel quite real. I've got mixed emotions. I think quite a lot of people have got mixed emotions. He is the Celtic manager. I will back him 100% before I even start to talk. I was talking to somebody else about it yesterday, and they were asking me, a non-football fan that knows I'm a big football fan, how do you feel about it? And I was kind of like, if it was any manager in the world that was of the calibre of a Brendan Rodgers, I would be absolutely over the moon. So I suppose on that, I'm over the moon. But the fact that it is Brendan Rodgers and the way that he left to go to Leicester and the way his career's went, I suppose, since then is leaving me with a wee bit of sort of like, oh man, like, I don't like the fact that it's somebody that's been at the club before coming back. I think with Lenny, it was a disaster. And I'm not a big fan of this scenario, but this is what we need to deal with. So I'm in two minds. There's a part of me is like, he is a world-class manager, a world-class coach. He might even take some of these players to a new level. I was talking to Killian Sheridan, and I was saying, I reckon that this current Celtic squad beats Brendan Rodgers' invincible squad in an 11v11. That's not to say that, player to player they're better. I think, Ange last season goes up against, I think they would have a very good chance of beating them. So he's coming in at a time when we're super strong in the squad. We've got guaranteed Champions League football. Couldn't be a better situation for Rodgers to come into this. So there's that part of me is like excited. I'm also excited to the potential of the players that he might sign, the backing that the board have promised him to come back. But I'm ultimately left feeling a bit flat at the fact that it is him. That's just honest. That's me being totally honest with it.
I think that it's fair to say everything you said. I wouldn't disagree with any of that.
How do you feel about it?
I would say that we said this before, but for me, it's kind of one of those things where there's it's such a strange one, because there are positives. There's so many clear positives and so many clear negatives, I think, to it, in the sense that, he obviously left us in a terrible position, and he put me through the worst season, he put a lot of Celtic fans through the worst possible season, and you can say it and you want to be Lennon, right, but if Rodgers stays, we win 10 in a row, I believe. And I think most Celtic fans believe that. And that was something that we all sang about, and he did all that and all that. He knew, and he left in the middle of it. So, we kind of forget it's hard to forget how bad that actually was. Because if you would actually go back to how you really felt, how raw you felt at that time, but interestingly, right, about that kind of negative point, I also feel like because of what's happened with Ange, it's maybe changed a lot of Celtic fans' opinion on that. And not necessarily, obviously still upset about how everything played out, but just the idea that I thought Ange was like different than Rodgers, better than Rodgers in terms of ethically and wanting to stay with us for longer and such. But when you see a guy that you're so convinced is going to stay for 8 years and he leaves right away, it kind of makes you think, well, you know, he just did the same thing as Rodgers. And does that just mean that? Does that really mean that every top manager that we get is just going to leave? Like I've seen this.
Yeah.
That's like going through that negative side of, why I left before. I think the way that Ange's left has made people think, well, that maybe this is just kind of what happens with any kind of, especially if you know you're going to bring a high caliber manager in, and then on the flip side of that, there's been a few other things where I've seen it kind of discussed, like, oh, he's going to leave the first chance he gets. But the argument I would kind of make to this is that I feel like that would happen with any Celtic manager at this point. If you come to Celtic and win a treble and do well, teams are going to be interested in you, and surely that is good for Celtic. Surely, like, if we are now aware that we're going to have managers in 2 to 3 year cycles, like, is it a bad thing that they're, in order for it to stay longer than that, they basically need to not be successful? And is that what we want? We want Celtic to be winning trophies, and this is where we come about how I feel about it, right? My main concern about Ange Postecoglou leaving was thinking about not winning the league, not winning the cups. I know everyone wants us to do well in Europe, and it's not like I don't want us to do well in Europe, but see, at the end of the day, the bottom line is, like, the main priority is always beating Rangers. Like, maybe not to everybody, but to me, like, my feeling about it is, like, I'm going, right, well, if I try and take the emotion or the way that Rodgers left and the divisiveness of the whole thing, take the emotion out of it, and I go, who on paper is most likely to make sure that we're going to have a better team than Rangers next season? You can't really argue with Brendan Rodgers coming in, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You replace a guy who just won a treble by a guy that won 2 trebles. So it's kind of like, well, and technically 3 if you're really being fair with that. But I would say that that's what it comes down to for me, is I think that he essentially, and hopefully this isn't something that people can screen grab and play at the end of the season, but I just feel like what it basically does is guarantees us like domestic success, which is the main thing, and so that's what I'm happy about, I guess, is knowing that I feel like he's definitely going to produce a team that should be able to beat Rangers.
It's going to give us the best chance, isn't it? Like, I don't know if anybody can actually guarantee success. Like, injuries, all sorts of football's a mad
football
game.
Is weird, right?
And I think, like, even if we think about getting into that 10 in a row season, when I seen the transfers, like the business that Celtic did at that time, I was almost like, we're guaranteed to win 10 in a row. Do you know what I'm meaning? So I would err on the side of caution of saying, like, this appointment guarantees success, but it gives us the best chance. I don't think we could have got anybody any better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that's it though. And see, for all the debate around the fans and the controversy about this appointment, there isn't anyone out there debating the fact that this guy is a world class manager. Do you know what I mean? Or coach, I would say. And so that, I give credit to the board for that. I think the exciting thing is the fact that the board could have so easily taken the foot off the gas for this. They could have so easily went, let's just go get another Ronnie Dyler, basically, and kind of downsize again. But Rodgers is not a downsize. He's not. No. He's going to cost. He will have cost him a lot of money for a 3-year deal, and he would have needed a guarantee of a certain amount of budget, and they didn't need to do that. So that to me,
I think that the last time when Rodgers was here, the lack of ambition for the board was cited as one of the reasons why he said get turned by another job. Mm-hmm. We sold Dembele. He didn't want him to be sold. He wanted a certain calibre of player. We never got it. I mean, that last season, we're talking about guys like Tojan.
Who's that?
Ollie Burke.
You wanted that. What was that fullback you got at Leicester that you wanted at Celtic?
I'm not too sure, but I know the big one was John McGinn.
Aye.
It was at 0.5 million quid to get John McGinn, like an extra £500,000 or something, or £1 million to get John McGinn. We never got him. So I think that's the exciting part of this, is that clearly Celtic have promised to back him, I think we backed Ange. I think we backed Ange more than we backed any other manager outside of Neil Lennon in that 10 in a row season, where he get backed as well to a like 6-7 players or whatever it was that he brought in. So we backed Ange over the course of 4 transfer windows. I'm excited to see, if I take that sort of like worry that I've got, I'm excited to see who he signs, what he produce if he gets backed. Because I don't know if he ever... I mean, that first season, we signed Dembele, Scott Sinclair, and the right back.
Yeah, and they were all... I can't remember the right back actually, but they were all... Sinclair was a brilliant signing. Sinclair in the first season at Celtic was one of the best Celtic players I've ever seen. Like, it was. People forget how good he was in that first season. But anyway, yeah, like it was evident when you seen the transfers in his second season that he wasn't getting backed. And I feel like it's interesting because you do wonder if like Ange coming in, he seemed to have a lot of say in how we did recruitment and things like that. And I'm wondering whether maybe the board have sort of taken some good sort of structural advice from Ange over the course of the last couple of years and put that in place for if he had left and have decided that there was a lot of reports that they were going to back Ange with a big £30 million budget and for the Champions League, and they were going to do all this. So I wonder if that plan that they had was, they thought, well, we still want to carry that out, we still want to go and try and push to be at the next level. So if we're going to give somebody all this money, we want to give the money to a world-class manager. And so that's the idea that they're going to try and back Rodgers the same way that we're going to back Ange this summer is exciting to me. And I think that also one of the things that me and my brother always talked about in his first spell was the fact that he was very, very good at developing players, very good at improving players' ability on the pitch. And that, to me, was sort of the big thing about Ange leaving, because you go, oh, like, you loved the way that everybody was always getting better. You were never worried about not being prepared and not giving your all. And I look at guys like Matt O'Reilly and people like that, and I think, how can Rodgers develop these players? Because he developed a lot of players where he was the first time, and made them all better. I mean, he made Stuart Armstrong, and even when he came in, Callum McGregor was not a regular starter in place. So I think that
Scott Brown got a new lease of life. Tom Rodgers got a new lease of life. Like there was a bunch of players. We need to mention them. Lee Griffiths got a new lease of life under Rodgers. Like there was a whole bunch of players that took that step up. I think even guys like Ayer really developed in the. I mean, even though he went on loan to Kilmarnock as well, but he developed. He took players to a new level in a similar way that Martin O'Neill did with the sort of Kenny Douglas, John Barnes squad. Guys like Bobby Pettit, just being around, like knowing exactly what to do, being around somebody that's that sort of like charismatic. How do you see the current Celtic squad fitting into his tactics? Like he plays quite a flexible game, but I think one of the ones that he did prefer at Celtic was a sort of 4-1-4-1, and he's also been known to play like a 4-2-3-1 as well, and a 4-4-1-1. But I think the 4-4-1-1 at Leicester was because they were having to play very defensively. Like, we're not going to play like that. I think he'll probably... I don't see him playing inverted wing-backs the same way that Ange. I've never seen the Rodgers team play that.
That's so disappointing. I like inverted. Rest in peace, inverted fullbacks. Craig Taylor's Celtic career could be an end. See, this is interesting, right, tactical-wise, because you would say that the overall idea of what they're trying to do is kind of the same. They both want to play it on the deck and on the deck. I'm saying that like I'm playing in fives, but they both want to pass the ball. The key, the kind of one of the biggest differences that I noticed was that it's Rodgers is a bit more methodical. Andrew's always like, we never stop, take the quick throw. I don't think you're going to see quick throw-ins as much and all this fast-paced stuff. I think believes in slow, patient build-up. And I would agree that you won't see inverted fullbacks. You might see it at some stage, but not as like much of a vocal point. I think that was like it was almost like Andrew's system was a bit more. It was, for lack of a better way of putting it, like ruthless in the sense that he just was always. It was a case of going 100 mile an hour and go for it. Whereas, like, I don't think Rodgers thinks of it like that. But what I would say is, formation-wise, what you're saying there, I think that you could see someone end up having to drop out the midfield because of that. So it'd be interesting to see what he thinks of the players he's got and how he, because you think about all the Japanese players that Andrew's brought in and players from all around the world. Who is he going to rate? What is he going to think? What is going to work? Like you had mentioned, maybe somebody like Matt O'Reilly struggling to get back in if he does do a 4-1-4-1. But before I forget as well, what you were saying about like how they had to play a more defensive shape at Leicester. I wonder whether, and this is a positive argument, is that him going to Leicester and coming back to us and having to play that defensive way, whether that is actually that experience hopefully has made him a better coach and a better manager. Because if you remember in his first spell in Europe, obviously we had that one group stage that was good where we beat Anderlecht away and all that, and it was
we drew home and away with Man City.
But the following season we get hammered by I think we get hammered like 7-1 PSG, and see, no matter who you're playing, I don't want to see any Celtic team get beat by 7 goals but 10 of it. You know what I mean? Like, I think a professional football team at that level should never be getting beat 5-6-7-0, and so I wonder whether he'll be more willing to adapt in Europe, which might benefit us. Because see, as much as we're Celtic fans and we want to sit and say that those 60 minutes against Real Madrid makes me believe that Andrew's going to, win the Europa League next season. But if you take your Celtic half off for a second, was that really actually that realistic? The idea that he was going to just, be able to play through teams, and will Rodgers be maybe just out of the need to want to be more successful in Europe? Will he be a bit more diplomatic in his approach?
Absolutely. I mean, I would love to see that. I would like to see, as much as maybe there might be Celtic fans that are like, no, we shouldn't change. I would like to see us have multiple different options.
Yeah.
I would like to see us play a less naive game in Europe. Like you're saying, like, I mean, I think the night that we squared up against Paris Saint-Germain, we were forced to play Tony Ralston at right back against Neymar. And Anthony Ralston has come on leaps and bounds since that night, but he get absolutely ran fucking ragged. So, I don't know if I judge quite based on getting hammered by 7 goals. I think Lenny, Stratton, I think they all took absolute doons in Europe.
But also, Rodgers got through the qualifiers as well. He got through the qualifiers.
Which we don't need to... It's not a hurdle that we don't need to worry about. He can concentrate the summer on getting the system in place, getting the players in that he wants. I think a casualty of the Rodgers system might be Maida.
Oh, that's the obvious one.
I would be interested to see what he thinks of Dyson Maida, because he very much encapsulates that Ange Postecoglou, we don't stop, you run, you put people under pressure, you press. And I'm wondering if he'll be one of the ones that Rodgers doesn't fancy, because I think Rodgers prefers a football player. And I love Dyson Maida. I love him in a Celtic jersey. But as we all know, like, he has his moments where the football lets him down, the energy, the commitment, the fitness levels, but the actual football lets him down. So I think he might be a casualty. I think he might lean towards Abada and Jota rather than... And he liked James Forrest. I don't know how long James Forrest has got left in his deal, but we might see him feature a wee bit more as in a different Celtic team. But as what you were saying there about him going to Leicester, it is a different manager coming into a club at a very different place. Like, I think when he came in, the enthusiasm and the momentum had come out of Ronnie Dyler's tenure at Celtic. As a club, we felt very flat. We were closing top tiers and like League Cup nights and Scottish Cup games, and I think that we needed that boost. but he's now got a different job in his hands because he's coming into an established team that's playing well and has got automatic qualification into a Champions League. And now I suppose he needs to prove himself in some regards. That could be a real positive, and I've no thought about it like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. He should feel that he has something to prove, because I believe that in terms of how his career's went since Celtic, he probably does have something to prove. And he also, if he didn't feel that, I don't think he'd be coming here. If he didn't feel that he had something to prove, he wouldn't be coming. And I think that he, there's a lot of, obviously, when you actually think about the fact that, like you say, the whole situation is different, but it makes sense to me that the board have looked at this kind of squad that we've got, this young team that played a similar system, and I feel like it's a safe bet to think that this guy's going to come in and hopefully take us to the next level. Because we've talked about a lot of the positives, so I guess what are the negatives of the situation, in the sense of, because see, even with all that, there is a part of me that's a bit hesitant, I would say, in my stomach. I'm thinking, this could really, this could be great, but it could also be a bit of a bit of a crazy.
I think he's, because of the history, because of what happened, I think he's a couple of bad results away from being under pressure. That's a concern for me. That's what worries me, is that there's not going to be a lot of patience for him. He's coming into a winning team that has annihilated everybody in front of him for 2 years. And if we start to see a slow start, Ange got a lot of allowances because of the way that he came in, the state of the club. I think the opposite is going to be true of Brendan Rodgers. He's not going to get a lot of allowances. He's got, this is providing that we keep all of the squad together and he doesn't go through some sort of rebuild. He's expected to win straight off the bat. So I would say that that's a pressure. Whether or not that is a positive or a negative pressure remains to be seen, mate. I think only time will tell. But I've got that same sort of concern that you've got about, 3 or 4 bad results. Rodgers' head's going to be on the chopping block, because he's taken out a team that has needed 3 or 4 bad results since the first 10 games of last 2 seasons ago.
Well, what I want to say about this, on the kind of personal side of the Rodgers saga, I feel like what I would say is, I think that anyone that feels, that's criticising this appointment and feels that, feels they don't want it and is against it, I don't think you can really hold that. Like, I don't think we should allow people to have these responses to this, because it's a fair response. It's a fair response to a guy that left us in the middle of a season that we've been chatting about for the past 9 years before that, and he left us in the middle of it. And I can understand why people are raging and upset, and so I think this whole idea that everyone should just be happy about it and forget about it is a bit nonsense. And like, I think people that feel aggrieved have a right to be, right? But on the flip side of that, what I would say is, get out your system through the summer, and by the time as we're going to kick a ball, that's where you kind of want to see everybody get behind him, because at the end of the day, nobody wanted Ange, and we backed him mainly because he is our Celtic manager, and no matter how, what I would hope is that the love for Celtic overrides a hate for Rodgers. Do you know what I mean? That's what we've got to, because this has happened now. That, he's here, he's a manager, it's done. He's going to be the manager. So, if I'm a Rangers fan, you want to see divide, you want to see argument amongst fans, and we need to remember. We basically need to remember what the big picture is. The big picture is being number 1 in Glasgow. That's got to be the main aim, and you're not going to get you're putting that in risk if you end up creating this toxic environment. Like, and the flip side to what I'm saying is, they could say, well, the board have caused this by appointing them, but what I'm saying is that's not going to change now. So
no.
How much do you hate Rodgers compared to how much you want to see Celtic succeed? And that would be the kind of thing that I would say to anybody that's sort of feeling it, because I take, when it was announced, when it was rumoured, when we all kind of started to realise this might actually happen, my first reaction was get that to. Like, I was like, get this guy out of here, man. No chance. I don't want. Like, see, I just started to realise that it could happen. I was going, I don't know about that. Like, it doesn't feel right. But he's got to know. Rodgers has got to know what he's done. He knows that how that all played out. He knows how the fans feel about it. So he must. The talks with the board must have been really positive for him to actually sign a 3-year deal.
Yep. Well, apparently he laid out a sort of 3 to 5 year plan in his vision. So I think that you'd said something earlier about sort of like him continuing. I think he's going to try and do that. I think he's going to just try and get behind the wheel of like a bus that's already moving. And I think he'd be stupid not to do that. When Lennon came in after he left, I think for the last part of that season, I remember an interview with Neil Lennon where he went, "I'm not going to change anything. It'd be silly for me to change anything with like 9 games to go." And then the summer where we signed like El Yunusi and Christopher Julian and stuff like that. He then started to make his stamp and he changed the system. I was really sort of enthusiastic about that. Like, please keep the system going. Like, please keep the system that's in place. It's already there. It's working. But I think that a guy like Rodgers is not going to do that. I think he's going to come in. He's going to change it. He's going to put his own stamp on it. He's going to sign at least 3 or 4 of his own players. And I think we'll see a different Celtic team. I just hope that, like you said, it's the next level. It's that type of Celtic team that take care of business at domestic, but can go out on a Tuesday or Wednesday night and put in a performance. Because it's about performances. Like, really, when it comes to the Champions League, results are super important to us. But I don't think, it would be realistic to say the target is knockout stages, a Champions League football. I think like the target this year's got to be Europa League knockout. Try and get a couple of good results. Try and like get positive results in our home games that gives us enough points to finish third, and then the stretch targets that we might get second. So I think we'll see a lot changing. I don't think we'll see a guy come in and being like, I'm just going to keep this. Keep the system that's already there. I think he's got his own ideas. The other thing that I think is a negative versus Ange is that Ange almost had this sort of like egoless philosophy about the way that it was about the team, it was about the squad, and it was about the achievements. He tried to not take as many plaudits as he could and would always put them back to the players. And I don't see Rodgers really being like that. He's got an ego. I think it's part of what makes him great as a manager.
Yeah.
But does it become now again like that time when he was manager? A lot of it was like about Brendan Rodgers and not about Celtic. And it was all like Brendan Rodgers is here for 10 in a row. And I don't know if we can quite have that same dynamic. I hope he doesn't try and force that same dynamic onto it. And it becomes more about like, I'm here for the club. And more of the sort of messages that Ange spoke about, this great institution and blah, 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 and less about him being on the stage at the Hydro and doing interviews with Eamon Holmes and blah, blah, blah. Because you never seen Ange do stuff like that. You almost felt like that wasn't really his style. Yeah. He would have been more about done his talking on the field. And so I'm hoping for a bit more of that for Rodgers.
I mean, that is true, right? Like, that is what he's like. But I do also think that he's smart and that he's got, like, he is aware. I feel like he seems like the kind of guy that's aware, and I just feel like he'll know that he can't really come out and be. I mean, I what I'm saying is, I feel like he'll know that it's going to take some time to mend all offences with all the Celtic support. So he's not going to come out and be, you're welcome for being here, everybody. It's great to be back. It's great to be back because he'll be smart enough to know that won't work.
Yeah,
And the egomaniac will come out in time. I just don't think it will come out right away because he knows that for the first wee bit, it's going to be a bit bumpy. Understandably so, it was never going to be a completely smooth thing. In terms of what you're saying about him changing the things, the only thing that, the thing that I feel okay with about that, even though that is a bit of a concern because you like how things are going, is that, the guy has a... One thing that I absolutely was desperate for from whoever we appointed as manager was a clear philosophy. and somebody that had the experience to communicate that to players. And so he might come in and change it up, but at the end of the day, I like the fact that he's got a clear idea of the style of play he wants to have. And it's different from Ange, but it's not a million miles different from Ange. It's not something that the players aren't going to be unfamiliar with. And so, and the truth be told, right, any manager that comes in, like say how you're saying about Lennon came in and kept it the same, but Lennon came in right in the middle of the season. We had a treble on. There wasn't any tape machine or anything. And so Rodgers has got a full summer, a full pre-season, a full transfer window. I think that it would be kind of strange for a manager to come in with all that time and money and not change anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking into account who's going to leave for Spurs and what's going to happen with who's going in and who's coming out. I think he will go and get like another winger, for example, because even if he does fancy me that, I can't see, because on the land you could argue, out with Carter Vickers maybe, that Carter Vickers and McGregor, that maybe attacking wise, Mida was almost one of the first names on Andrew's team sheets every week. I don't think he'll be that for Rodgers, but I think that, so he'll go to get a winger. I can see him maybe go and get a left back. Greg Taylor obviously had a great season, but I've spoken a bit about how I feel like Greg Taylor specifically thrived in that inverted fullback role. So if he's not going to do a direct inverted fullback role, I could see him looking at Taylor and going 1v1. He's not good enough. He's not going to be good enough. And so I'd say if I was Greg Taylor, that might be a position that he's going to look at. But see, the big thing for me in terms of if you try and look at it positively, right, is Ange was a huge personality, a guy that was basically the heart and soul of the club for a bit there, and I feel like there's a part of you that to keep this going, you need to have, see in terms of keeping our players and and obviously Hamish is watching this. I'm not trying to directly quote him because I did watch the 67 Hill video with this earlier, but he makes it, so I'll say this. The point I was going to make is almost word for word what he said, so that's why I mentioned that there. But he made a really good point about how, thinking about the players. If you're the players now and you see that this guy that Ange, has brought you in and all that and he's left now, you're kind of wanting to see, well, what are Celtic going to do? What is this club that I'm not going to do?
Uh-huh.
And then, if they're not us, so then they weren't here really when this happened.
Yeah.
So if you're a player, you're going, Brendan Rodgers.
I completely agree. I mean? Somebody was like, the Japanese guys, how are they going to feel? Like one of my mates, and I was like, you need to remember that very few of them actually played under Ange in Japan. Like, like Kyogo wasn't an Ange player. Like he bought him, and there was Hitati. So there seems to be like this sort of like, I think a bit of concern that these guys are going to want to go because Ange isn't here anymore. It's like it wasn't like he brought a team there for Japan and put them into Celtic. He bought these guys and he might have known them like in passing or played against these teams and was impressed by them. But for sure, maybe not today, but in general, Brendan Rodgers is a bigger name than Ange Postecoglou in world football. I think in general, considering like what's happened the last 2 years, right? He's a Premier. He's multiple teams in the Premier League. Ange's unfounded and still to go and see what happens with him at Spurs. So I don't think there's going to be like this. Oh, I'm going to leave because Ange isn't here now. I'm with you. I think there'll be an excitement of like, fuck man, we're going to get to play under Brendan Rodgers,
and that's good but it's good for us though as fans. That if the players are buzzing about it, that's good, because you don't want an appointment where the players are like, who's that guy? And that's what you may have got that about Enzo Maresca. A lot of players may be like, I don't know who that guy is. I'm away.
Yeah.
Right. So
absolutely. I think like the last thing I'll say on it is that I had the thought yesterday, I'm excited to see O. Because I think he's a very similar player to Dembele with the physical strength, and I mean maybe not quite the especially when he played for Celtic, talk about Musa here, like the pure, I don't know, like the sniper, you know, like pure, take every opportunity and would always be there. But I see them as quite similar styles of player, you know, like get themselves in about it, quite physical, can get the ball. And once the ball's at their feet, like, you know, they're very good on the ball. So I'm excited to see what happens there. I'm also really excited. I think once you go over the sort of like, is this a step backwards for Celtic and the way that he left and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I think ultimately when we've spoke it through and hearing your point of view, I'm getting a wee bit more excited about it as well and thinking about what he could do and how he could impose his style and his team, how is he going to take this team and improve it? Because that is ultimately his job. He's not going to get away with regression. So
that's
quite excited.
That's the part that you feel confident about. I do feel, if there's one thing that I feel pretty confident about, is that it's that Rodgers will come in and improve these football players.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that allows you to feel a bit more at ease with it, I feel like. And you also, it's really hard, but you do need to kind of take your emotions as that a wee bit to recognise that. And so it took me, if we did this the day that you got appointed, I'd have been like, this is outrageous. But I've gotten there with it. And one thing we haven't discussed that we probably should is the contract length. So he's came in, 3 to 5 year plan. You mentioned that briefly. And I had a wee kind of point. I was thinking about this, right? I don't know if it's just wishful thinking. So, but tell me what you think about this. He's came in and said a 3 year deal, and there's been talk of him talking about a 5 year plan. So it's not far fetched to believe that there could be a potential extension there if they've laid out a 5 year plan. Now, people keep talking about the idea of him like leaving at the first chance to get. And listen, that might very well happen. If something comes up, he might go right. But the fact that he was here and he left for Leicester and he's back for Celtic because he gets sacked by Leicester, you know, it does make me kind of wonder, like, did this guy leave? And you know how, what's that saying people say when you know, the grass is always green and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Did he maybe had some time to think about it and went, do you know, that time at Celtic was pretty enjoyable and I got to play football and everyone thought I was a legend and it was, you know, fun. Like, maybe he's thinking to himself, if the board give me a good wage, if the board give me good money to spend, why not just stay here 3, 4, 5 years and because he is a egomaniac and he loves when people love him, right? And see, for as much as this debate is happening right now, if he stays for the next 5 years and gets us 5 league titles, nobody's going to remember when he left. You know what I mean? So he's probably thinking, you know, I've been in the Prem, I've got the, like, because what you know is this, you know that he got a big payoff. He probably got a big payoff from Leicester, right? He's probably made a really good amount of money being in the Premier League, and I'd be surprised if he was. I would expect it to be more money with Celtic now than he was the first time, right?
Well, I think that's been documented. He's the highest paid Celtic manager, again, higher than what he was the last time was the record.
I didn't actually know that, so it's good to know, right? So with that all in mind, we've got a guy coming in who's got no financial concerns, you know, in terms of people kept using that for Ange. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think Ange was on pennies with Celtic, right? But people kept saying, like, oh, he's setting up his life, you know, by going to Spurs and getting that payday. Rodgers has already done all that. So the only real reason that Rodgers has to come back is to create a legacy, I feel like. So it gives me a glimmer of hope that the guy might be coming back with long-term intentions.
Yeah, and like lofty ambitions.
I don't think he leaves Celtic unless it's top 6. Like, I don't think he would. Like, but I don't think. But here's the thing, though. I don't think a top 6 team comes from him unless we do something significant in Europe.
Yeah, which would be mission accomplished if we get that. And like you're saying, if Gordon Strachan's right and knew the way where Celtic are, how they're placed, we are looking for a sort of 2-year project and nothing really more than that. If he does that and then leaves, I think you're right. The attitude of the Celtic fan kind of needs to change after the back of Ange, and maybe we just accept that.
Well, look, what you're saying is, if that is the case, what you're basically saying is every manager weekend is going to win 2 league titles, and it's like, can you really be that mad at that? You know?
No, not at all.
But this is what I'm saying is, he went to Leicester, and they ultimately he had success, but they went down, and that's how he left them in. Right? I think managers are judging how they leave teams at times, and so I don't see. it's telling to me that he wasn't even talked about with the Spurs job, you know, or any of the job, like the Chelsea job. Didn't hear anyone saying. I didn't hear any talk about Rodgers going to Chelsea. I know Leeds were interested for a bit. So what I'm saying is, there's no. I don't see. See if he comes to Scotland and wins a treble, I don't see that automatically attracting interest from England or anywhere else. I could see it. I can only really see that happening if he does something significant in Europe. So, you know, the guy is coming into a hostile situation, and I just believe that there's a part of me that wants to think that maybe he's coming thinking I'm going to be here for at least 3 seasons, which has got to be good for us, man, because we got a guy. Because if he is coming thinking he's going to be here 3, 4, 5 years, he's thinking about how he can develop the club that whole time. And that, at the end of the day, you know, because a lot of people, you've seen football, all these managers come in with all these big plans, and some of them go terribly wrong. But we've got a guy that had this kind of plan before and came in and won 2 trebles without really being that backed as well, that we've just mentioned there. If he's coming in to be backed with a squad that are already settled and without any Champions League qualifiers and a 3-year contract signed, then when you really look at that, like on paper, and take your emotions out of it, everything about that is positive.
I would say so. I agree with it.
The only, so really, truly the only thing that we're kind of worried about is how are the fans going to take to this? And I think that time and success here's all wins. As soon as we start winning games, I think it will start to fade away. But that's not to disregard the fact that, like I said earlier, people have a right to be hurt about it. All I'm saying is, come kick off and flag day, we should all be behind the manager. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So I think that was pretty. We covered that pretty efficiently.
Absolutely, mate. We got we're at 42 minutes, so we got it under 45, which is good.
We're getting there. We're getting close to it. But no, look. So yeah, I think overall there's a lot to feel happy about. I'm quite glad that it's not dragged on any further as well, because you do last few days over the weekend there, you're going, is this, because I started to think, if that doesn't happen, does that mean that we're going to get Kennedy as the manager? Because Enzo had already been away, so you're kind of wondering about that. But there's another point, the backroom staff, just on that, I think it's also positive that they've all stayed. I
agree, but we can do a video about that next week and some transfer news or whatever.
That's actually probably a better way of doing it. See, this is Paul's magic that he knows what he's doing. But no, yeah, we'll be doing more content all through the summer about everything that's going on. I'm sure this will be the last newsworthy thing to talk about, and then I've got some couple of good wee football guests lined up to do a proper 1-on-1. So you'll have more of that coming soon. Hope you're enjoying this football content, and we'll be back shortly.